really important cause. 427 days, I think, or 428 days today since the October 7th war. And this is the first time that we've had an opportunity to be able to host Eli Beer. Nearly all of you know who he is, and that's why we have so many people here. But I wanted to stress the importance of the day and the fact that it really is an important cause. So I'd like to introduce first Rabbi Shimon Green, who will say a few words. Maybe five.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I really do just want to say a few words and help get a context for a very nice morning, I hope. We have to understand, our Torah has different types of commandments, and they're not all the same. I don't just mean positive and negative. The positive commandments themselves are divided into two categories. One is called mitzvos chiyuviyos, absolutely obligatory mitzvahs, and others are called mitzvos chiyuviyos. They're mitzvahs that if you do them, you get a mitzvah, but you're not obligated to do them. What's an example of a mitzvah chiyuviyos? For example, a man has to put on tefillin. He can't say, well, if I put on tefillin, I'll get a mitzvah. He has to go out and get tefillin. Nothing you can do. Sukkah, you have to go and get a sukkah. Those are mitzvahs chiyuviyos. You must go and do them. But there are other mitzvahs, you're not obligated to do them, but if you do them, you get a mitzvah. Now, you'll be shocked, but for example, our Rabbi Feinstein of blessed memory said, for example, let's say the mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael. There's no question that it's a mitzvah, but it's not a mitzvah chiyuvis. It's a mitzvah kiyumis. It's a mitzvah that if you do it, you get credit for a mitzvah, but if you don't, God forbid, you can do wrong. Otherwise, all of us here would be transgressing the Torah by nullifying a positive precept. That's an example of a mitzvah that when you do it, you get a mitzvah, but you're not obligated to do it. Another example is the following: kindness. Chesed, taking care of other people, is a mitzvah kiyumis. It's not a mitzvah chiyuvis. If it was an obligatory mitzvah, if you lived here in Century Village, you wouldn't have a minute left in your day. In this few, what is it? We got a couple square miles here. You would spend all day and all night taking care of people's needs, and you wouldn't finish. You would never have a minute to take care of yourself. You wouldn't be allowed. So what's the answer? When it comes to kindness, since obviously we can't take care of everybody in the whole world all the time, it's a mitzvah kiyumis. Everybody has to make an evaluation and to see what they can contribute. And every time you do a mitzvah. But God forbid, if somebody needed something, you didn't do it, you're not transgressing, you're not called nullifying a mitzvah. But listen to this, obviously, everything has a cost. If I'm going to say, listen, I can't do it because it's going to cost me time, it's going to cost me money, nobody would ever do anything for anybody. Obviously, we have to be a little stringent with ourselves and say, listen, I got to shove over and compromise, let go of some of my needs and help somebody else. I'm not going to talk forever. Listen to this. The rabbis tell us that one of the rewards of a person who does chesed, who does kindness, is that after 120 years, when they're judged in heaven, instead of the heavenly court judging them, they are judged by God alone. That's supposed to be a tremendous reward. Well, what's the big reward? Either you're good or you're not good. And the answer is like this. You know that when people can think of alternatives, one person can't figure out why this person is innocent or should be acquitted or should be considered good, but another person can. The heavenly court are creations, they're angels. They're limited, but the God that made us is unlimited. And no matter who you are, and no matter what you did, that God is unlimited. If he's left alone, he'll always figure out a way that you come out on top. You're good, you're fine. And that's why it's a reward. And I will explain why it makes sense. You probably remember, before you get married, your husband or wife, you go out, boyfriend, girlfriend, 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, let's get cheeseburgers. Let's get some cheeseburgers. We're going to get something toasters. Let's go out. Where'd that come from? 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to go, let's get a coffee. You run. Then you get a baby. Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Hey, let's go out and get pizza. Wait a minute. We do the baby. Well, you have to grab the baby, grab the bottle, grab the diapers, all of a sudden, you got to have a whole nother kind of thinking. Can you write out? You can do it, but you have to be very creative to run out at 2 in the morning with a little baby, and then 2. And the same thing happens when it comes to kindness. You're busy. Everybody got a busy life. You got a family, you got friends, you got a job, you got everything. Somebody needs help. You're going to have to shove over. You're going to have to find a way to compromise your own life to make room for somebody else. And if you do it, then after 120 years, God does it. You know how to compromise, how to think laterally, how to see things differently. God's going to do the same thing for you. Don't need any more to emphasize to you what a great thing chesed is, what kindness is. Introduce a person, I'm not gonna leave it a dear for a person in 1 minute. Melly Beer, a person who figured out a way that he himself and hundreds of people could shove over and make room to worry about other people. That's a very great thing. That's a very great thing. Anybody that does chesed is creative and is compromising of their own personal needs and own personal life for the sake of others. That's the greatest thing of all. It gets a great reward. I think we're very fortunate to have a chance to hear from somebody who does it. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add a personal note. In 2015, at the APAC conference in Washington, Andrea and I were on the serpentine line, if you've ever seen that, trying to wait to get cleared from the Secret Service, because there are so many high value government officials, and I don't remember who was the speaker, but I had an hour and a half that I was standing next to Eli Beer, and his then 12-year-old son really enjoyed the conversation that we're having, and I think he's going to speak about that in a minute. So now let's talk about Eli Beer. Eli Beer was born and raised in Israel, where he witnessed his first terror attack at age 7, inspiring him to become a volunteer medic. Since 1988, he's been at the forefront of emergency medical response, managing major civil, wartime, and terror incidents. As founder and president of United Hatzalah, Eli also lectures on health, emergency response, and tech innovation. On October 7th, Eli led United Hatzalah's response to the terror attacks, dispatching 1,700 volunteers and coordinating with police, the army, and hospital. He later set up a field hospital at the Gaza periphery, saving thousands of lives. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Eli Beer. We've made a change on the fly. We're going to play a short video first, and then I will introduce them.
Did you know that when you're experiencing a life-threatening emergency, your chances of survival decrease by 10% every minute that goes by?
Yeah.
That's why we're always on call.
We're all volunteers for the most amazing cause in the entire world, ready to get to you faster than anyone else, no matter where we are.
When people need emergency medical attention, we, United Hatzalah volunteers, transform from citizens to
Superheroes. When an emergency hits, whether it's a car crash, heart attacks, allergic reactions,
choking,
a terror attack,
a woman going into labor,
time,
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 time, time, time. It makes all the difference between life and death. So how do you make sure you're fast enough to save lives?
United Hatzalah. It's like Uber, but for life saving. Let us show you how it works. When you experience an emergency and call United Hatzalah, a dispatcher will take your call within 3 seconds.
United Hatzalah, what's your emergency?
Once we get the call, our state-of-the-art system springs into action. Our advanced GPS-based dispatch algorithm finds the nearest United Hatzalah volunteer and contacts them immediately.
In big cities, small towns, even in the wilderness, there is always a United Hatzalah volunteer ready to race, save your life. And the whole thing is fast, so fast. From the moment the call comes in until volunteers are there to save your life,
It only takes 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
90 seconds?
90 seconds. Yeah.
We achieved this incredible speed thanks to an incredible fleet of every kind of vehicle.
Ambulances, boats,
The all-terrain vehicles, E-bikes, city transformers, helicopter. And the coolest one of them all, the Ambucycle. Ambucycles are motorcycles decked out with all the equipment that we need in order to save lives.
And because they're so small and fast, they can zip past traffic jams or navigate narrow streets, ensuring nothing gets in the way of treatment.
This whole crazy, brilliant idea started in the head of one crazy, brilliant man.
And I couldn't do this alone. Our team of over 7,000 volunteers save lives all over Israel and beyond. And best of all, it's free.
No bills, no medical debt.
Serving people from all back.
Every nation.
Every race.
I'm an hour, a Jewish volunteer saved my father's life. Because of that, I decided to join United Hatzalah.
We can all agree that saving lives is the most important value.
And the results speak for themselves.
Newborns brought into this world by Hatzalah volunteers.
People that get second chances in life.
Grandparents who see their grandchildren grow up.
Over 2,000 calls per day. That's over 600,000 calls per year.
That's missions all over the world.
Because helping people is what we do. We are the volunteers, the medics, the phone operators.
We deliver babies, and she's my mom. Because I am a volunteer in United Hatzalah, I saved my mother's life.
We are friends.
Strangers, and everything in between.
Jews, Muslims, Christians, ordinary people.
Extraordinary people. People just like you decided to make a difference.
To help each other.
Save lives.
We are United Hatzalah. United Hatzalah. United Hatzalah.
United Hatzalah.
United Hatzalah.
We are United Hatzalah.
And you are too.
By the way, I just want to say I met a few people here that are mishpocha. It's great to be at home, really, and I want to thank Tor and David, of course, and the rabbi, and a lot of the people were involved to make sure that this thing happened. I just want to say that today was a very historical day. 1967, I'm sure some of you were not born yet. 1967. Israel took over the Golan Heights, and it was a miracle. It was a miracle. And if it wasn't for that, God forbid, we would have the rebels right now on the Kinneret in the Sea of Galilee. And we would have had a lot more trouble since 1967 to now. But today, this morning, a group of soldiers went on the Golan Heights, on the Hermon, and took over the Syrian part of the Golan Heights, the Syrian part of the Hermon, which is so important and crucial to the Israel. And proud that one of them was my son. This is not for public record. I'm just saying my son is, David mentioned my son, but he was a little old chubby kid when he was 12 years old. He doesn't look like that anymore. He's in the special forces of the IDF. He looks like the real Israeli soldiers were, like the Maccabees of our generation. And I'm really proud that we have such incredible children and grandchildren. I'm sure I can ask you, how many of your family members, grandchildren or nephews or cousins are serving in the army right now in Israel? How many?
13.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Look at this, a lot more than 13. That's unbelievable.
I have
You have 13.
13.
It's unbelievable. And we're so proud, always so proud.
Yes.
That we're protecting our land in 2,000 years, since the Maccabees, since the Hashmonaim. The Jews have never fought back for all these massacres that happened in 2,000 years. We never fought back. We always had to observe the killing and the raping and the lootering that they did against the Jews. And we always, we had to accept it. Now, finally, Baruch Hashem, We're so proud to sit here in Boca Raton, in Torah Or, and know that our children and grandchildren and nephews and cousins are fighting back, and our mishpucha, Am Yisrael Chai, and all together. I'm so proud to represent United Hatzalah, and I'll say that I started my journey when I was 6 years old. I grew up in Yerushalayim, in Beit Vagan, you know Beit Vagan, right? And I used to be American, now very few speak English there, it's all French mostly. But I grew up, it's funny, my mother moved to Israel, 1969, my parents, with 6 kids. I was born in 1973. My mother is in Israel more years than she was in America. Think about it, 69, right? She's now 95 years old, Kanai Nahara. And she lives in Israel for 50 something years, 56, 55 years. She doesn't speak a word of Hebrew. You probably speak better Hebrew than she does. Comes to show you what happens when you move into an American community in Jerusalem. So I grew up in a small community right next to Yad Vashem. And when I was a young boy, I was 6 years old. I was coming back from school, first grade, and I saw a bus on a Friday afternoon coming towards the bus stop. And as the bus stop stopped, was a number 12 bus. It blew up in front of my eyes. It was a traumatic thing, you know. It's not like today, kids could see things, they know already, they watch TV. We didn't have TV. We didn't know what bombing means. I didn't know why people were laying on the floor screaming for help, someone not talking, someone just injured, someone dead. I didn't know what happened. The fire was on the bus and smoke and the smell of the flesh was so bad. And I ran away, I ran home, and I remember that old man on the floor that was screaming for help. Now, I don't know how old he was. It could be he was 40 years old. For me, I was 6. So I didn't know how old, but he was an older man. And I couldn't help him, and I ran away, and that hunted me for years, that image of that person on the floor. And I said to myself, I wonder if he has survived, if he's okay, what happened to him. When I was a little older and I grew up in a cheder, you know, Shtisel, you ever saw Shtisel, the show? Something similar to Shtisel. The Rebbe was very tough, and I used to get kicked out of school every day. And if I didn't get kicked out of school, that means I didn't go to school that day. So one day I come back, the Rebbe kicked me out. I was a little older already. I was like 10 years old. And I went to Yad Vashem because I was bored. It was right across the street. I walked like maybe a few hundred meters and I was there. And when I got there and I seen the museum for the first time, I couldn't believe that people had to go through, the Jewish people had to go through what they had to go through. I was 10 years old. I saw the movies they were showing about Hitler and all the power he put together to kill Jewish people. I couldn't stop watching these videos. I was reading the stories and watching the videos. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor and save Jewish lives. That's what I want to do. I want to save people. If Hitler was able to do this and kill so many millions, I want to save as much as I could. Maybe I could save 6 million Jews. And that's how I grew up. Every time I was able to go to Yad Vashem, that's what I did. And I kept watching these things, and I can tell you, I knew the whole museum by heart. And when I was 15 years old, I saw a sign on a tree. In Yerushalayim, you know, you see trees full of signs. I saw a sign, you want to become an EMT and save lives? Come join us for our course, 44 hours. I said, amazing, 44 hours. I don't have to go to medical school. I can save lives for 44 hours. And that's what I did. I became an EMT, emergency medical technician. I know I met here someone who was an EMT, the first 20 EMTs in Queens, right? Q20, saving lives. You did that. It was more than 44 hours, I know. Maybe it was the same. Yeah. Basic CPR, basic tourniquets, basic stuff. You know, we do, but you learn everything. You'll even learn how to deliver a woman, a baby. And I did that course. And it was the first course to actually graduate in a successful way. Like in school, I didn't do well. So I went to volunteer in the back of an ambulance. And it was the most exciting moment of my life, like going on the back of the ambulance. I'm going to go save someone today. And I remember the first emergency we went out to. It was in Gilo, the other side of Jerusalem. It took us so long to get there. And I was waiting. The driver was going like crazy. We went to a person who was not breathing, and we had to go save that person. It took us so long to get to that person. We got there, the woman was yelling at us, "What took you so long? What took you so long?" And we started CPR. And the woman was saying, "I spoke to my husband. He was talking to me when I called you guys." And she didn't really call us, she called the ambulance, and we were dispatched by walkie-talkie. But when we arrived, he wasn't breathing anymore. He wasn't alive. We did CPR, trying to save him and bring him back. And after a while, a doctor and an ambulance shows up and they say, after, working on this person, said he can't save him. He's not alive anymore. It was a bad feeling for me. I came back home. My father said, how did your date go? Did you save anyone? I said, no, we tried. We took to the hospital 4 people that were okay. They were like a little injured or whatever. But that person that we needed to save, we couldn't get there in time. And this happened week after week after week. I realized I started writing down every call. And I realized our average response time to emergencies was 17 minutes. And I said, does it make sense? Why is it that when we arrived to emergencies by an ambulance, and we were in the official ambulance of Israel, Magen David Adom, our average response time was 17 minutes. I see the person on the floor, but no one's helping. We're the first ones always. Why isn't that they have anyone else? She has a Hatzalah call. It's okay if it's a, don't let the beeper blow up here. That's it. Anyways, we use beepers and I'll get into it soon. In any case, I couldn't believe it. And I started writing down every call. And about 1.5 years after, 1.5 years after I started volunteering, I was 16.5 years old. I realized I never saved anyone. I helped many people, but when someone needed to be saved, it was impossible. And I said to myself, all these studying that you do in school for EMTs to save someone from a CPR, like do CPR, it doesn't make sense. You can't save anyone. And it's like we get there too late. It's all about coming on time. And one day we had a call that changed my life. It was a 7-year-old boy who was eating lunch and he was eating a hot dog. And that kid choked on that hot dog. And the mother was hysterical. She didn't know what to do. She tried banging on his back, but it wasn't helping. It got even worse. And she called for an ambulance. We were the ambulance that was sent to save this kid. It took us 21 minutes to arrive. It was the other side of town. We were only ambulance available in the city. That means they had a fleet of 10 ambulances, and we were the only ones that are available that time, and it took us 21 minutes to arrive. And I can't even describe what a disaster it was to see the mother in this situation that she was with her son. And we were crying. The whole team, the driver of the ambulance was crying, but he couldn't do anything. He drove like crazy, but he couldn't get there fast. And when we started CPR, a doctor runs into the house. He says, I'm a next door neighbor. I live across the street. I saw you guys show up. I wanted to come out. What happened? And we told him. He was working with us for 45 minutes trying to save him. And after 45 minutes trying everything, he said there was nothing else we could do, just bring a sheet to cover. That moment was the worst moment of my life, but that's when I had an epiphany. Something came up in my head. I said, I don't understand. This doctor lives across the street. No one called him. Why don't they call the next door neighbor? Why do they wait for an ambulance? No one thinks about it. Let's call the next door neighbor who's a doctor or a nurse or EMT. So I said, I have to do something about it. I want to redesign the way people get saved. I want to create a flash, like a flash mob response, meaning someone nearby should respond instead of waiting for an ambulance, because we come too late, but the neighbor could come there much earlier. So I came up with this idea of Hatzalah in Israel. Now, Hatzalah did exist already in New York, but we didn't really know anything about New York. We knew what's going on in Israel. We were volunteering in Israel. They didn't have internet, or I didn't even visit in New York till then. I said, I want to create something that will have a system that whenever someone gets injured or hurt, 911 of Israel, Magen David Adom, will send the calls to us. So we could respond earlier, because what do we do the whole week? Nothing. When we go volunteer in the ambulance, that's what we do. But at home, we do nothing. Home, when in school, I wasn't in school anymore, but when I was home, when I was working, I was actually working for my father then in his bookstore. By Pagani, a little bookshop. I would go and respond to calls nearby. So I went to meet the head guy that worked for the organization, and I said, I want to volunteer. Not only when I come in the ambulance, but I want to when I want to volunteer from home. I will go ahead and buy pagers. They had these pagers, you know, they use them now in Hezbollah mostly. But then we, not anymore, but then we actually used to buy these pagers. I don't know how many of you had pagers. Many of you probably had pagers. You had one, right? It was like, yeah, everyone had pagers, the doctors and stuff. I said, we'll buy pagers. You'll page us whenever something happens nearby. And they said, what are you, nuts? Are you crazy? We're not sharing any calls with you guys. We only share it with the ambulances. And if someone gets an ambulance close to them, they're lucky. If not, that's what it is. It's like that everywhere in the world. That's how it is in New York. Not, of course, that's how the regular 911. They send an ambulance. And that's how it is in France. And that's how it is in everywhere. So they're not going to do anything. So I said, I'm stuck. I have a great idea of shortening response time, but they don't want to share the calls. And they control the calls of emergencies. So what do we do? So I said, in Israel, we're the innovation nation. We came to more or less of a desert, and we rebuild the country, right? And I said, we invented so many things, but the thing we are so proud we invented, you know what it's called? Chutzpah. We invented chutzpah. We don't think no is an answer. So I went ahead and I created a system without permission. And I went to America. I went to a place called Radio Shack, Zichronam Livracha. And I bought 2 police scanners. These radios, you could listen into the police, you could like hack the police, hack the fire, hack the ambulances. Came back to Israel. I had to hide in my luggage so the customs don't catch it. And I started an underground command center to listen into their emergency. And that's how we started United Hatzalah in Israel. This was in 1989, a group of 15 volunteers. And I said to myself, you know, when I was stuck in the back of an ambulance and I would sit there and I would see motorcycles passing us, we were stuck. The motorcycles went to deliver pizza. And I said, these guys from the pizza are delivering hot pizza. When we come, we see a cold patient. So something doesn't make sense. I said, if I choke, I told my friends, it's a joke. If I ever choke, call for pizza. They're gonna save me. And that's what actually brought the idea to create the first ever ambulances on motorcycles called AmbuSac. And I went ahead and I created this network of volunteers responding on motorcycles. And we would listen to the scanner, and that's how we started recruiting more and more people. The first week I started this, I was listening into the walkie-talkie and I hear a call of a man hit by a car, and it was a block away from me. I just ran there. I had no medical equipment on me, but I knew what to do. And I knew what to do. And then all of a sudden I come there and I see a lot of people surrounding this man. He was on the floor and he was bleeding really bad from his neck. And I said, I don't have a bandage. I don't have nothing. So I took my yarmulke off my head and I used it as a tourniquet. And I pushed it in, I put some pressure on it and I stopped his bleeding that way. An ambulance showed up afterwards and took him to the hospital. I didn't know if he'll survive or not, hoping. But he was still breathing, but he was unconscious. 2 days later, I got a phone call. Someone says, are you LEVR? I said, yes. He says, my father was treated by you 2 days ago in a car accident on Pisgah Street. And my father woke up this morning at Hadassah Hospital. And he wants to thank you for saving his life. So I started crying. It was my most proudest moments of my life. I couldn't believe I actually, first time, a year and a half after I started becoming an EMT, I saved someone. So I went to visit him in the hospital and he gave me the greatest hug ever. And when he took his hands off me, I saw he had a number on his arm. And that moment changed my life forever. I realized that you could be the best doctor in the world. You could be a professor. You could be the best ambulance corps in the world, but if you don't get there in the first 90 seconds, you're not making a difference. Because brain damage is so quick. And if you get there, you have a higher chance of saving someone. If you get there faster, you better be you'd rather be an EMT that gets there faster than be a Harvard professor who gets there late. And that's how I decided to change my life. That changed my life, and I decided to focus my life on creating the fastest network in the world called United Hatzalah. Volunteers in the communities respond to the closest volunteers, or closest people who need them. And it started growing within days. Became 15 to 30 to 60 to 80 to 90, 100. Started growing. And the beautiful thing is that it started growing from community to community, mostly in the firm community. Because we were all firm. Now, I'll tell you why I realized, and you'll agree with me, you 20, you'll agree with me that the reason why firm people love Hatzalah so much, maybe the rabbi will agree. Where's the rabbi? All right. I'll tell you why you'll agree with me. Firm people love Hatzalah because the only way to run out of shul middle of davening. When the rabbi is talking too much, all you have to do is say, sorry, Hatzalah call, and no one can ever check if it's real. That's true. And dishes and other things. So I started this, I realized how many firm people are coming, but it bothered me. Why don't we have non-firm people? It became like a part of our lives, but we want to get other people involved. So I started going to cities like Tel Aviv, Herzliya. They never heard of it. There, they would wait 25 minutes for an ambulance. Crap, there is worse than Jerusalem. So I started recruiting non-religious people to Hatzalah. And I said, this is going to be my second mission. First mission is saving lives. My second mission is Achdut, unity. And during the Second Lebanese War, which was in 2006, I decided to change the name from Hatzalah in Israel. It's called Hatzalah in Israel. It's called Hatzalah of Israel to United Hatzalah of Israel. And I think this was the greatest accomplishment this organization was able to do, to bring unity in Israel, which is not, unfortunately, not copied in the entire country, but it's an example of what Israel could be. Today we have 8,000 volunteers. We started with 15. We have 8,000 volunteers, men and women, religious and secular. And I'll tell you even something even weirder. One day I get a phone call from a guy. He says, my name is Muhammad. I want to talk to you. I said, yeah, what do you want to talk about? What do you want from me? He said, I want to talk to you about joining Hezbollah. I said, Hezbollah? He couldn't pronounce Hatzalah. I said, so this guy doesn't know which number he called. He called some mistake out here. He was trying to reach someone else. I said, do you mean Hezbollah? The terrorist group? He said, no. He got scared. It's a Hatzalah. He couldn't say Hatzalah. He couldn't say it. Really, it's a hard. Only Jews could say it, right? Not old Jews, but the ones who could. Josh, am I right? It took time for you to get what Hatzalah is, right? Yeah. So the religious Jews that go to shul, they could say Hatzalah because they daven all day and they should, zud. But the regular, like, Jewish people can't pronounce it. Not Arabs, for sure not. And I went and I met with him. I was really curious to know what does he want from me. He told me that his father had a cardiac arrest. He lives in East Jerusalem. He said his father was a good man. He told me all about his father. And he said his father was 55 years old. Cardiac arrest. It took an hour for an ambulance to show up. He said, if I had Hatzalah in my community, my father would have been alive. But after he died, I decided I want to go ahead and create this, like what you did in Beit Pagan, I want to do in Abu Tor, which is in Talpiot. I said, I want to save lives. I'll learn whatever it takes to. I want to save lives. I don't care whose lives I save, anyone's life. When I heard that, I said, I never trusted Arabs because I grew up after the terrorist attack. My life really changed. I said, but if someone wants to be an EMT and save lives, how can I stop him? I said, you know what? If you get your friends together, 20 people, Ahlan wa sahlan, join in. And I asked all the rest of the volunteers, I said, you know what? If they want to save lives with us and help us, why not? But we want to have a network of thousands of people responding to 90-second response. The only way to do it is by having everyone united in this idea. And it was very hard to do this in the beginning because of different cultures and everything. The funny thing is the Fur people and Arab people were the ones who got along the best because they knew exactly the same, more or less, traditions. But it was unbelievable. And I can say this guy, Muhammad, became a very active member. And he was to go out to at least 3 calls a day. And we gave him afterwards, someone donated an ambicycle in honor of his family. He put a name on his ambicycle. And I said to him, is it okay if we give it to an Arab volunteer? And he said, really, an Arab? Like, I said, you know what? This actually could bring me more value if I know Arabs are saving lives for Jews in Jerusalem. So I gave him the ambicycle, and he was very happy. He was a rabbi, actually, the one who donated. He thought it was a Kiddush Hashem. And he went ahead, and one day, Muhammad's driving the ambicycle. This is a crazy story. He's on the way home. His wife was waiting for him because there was the end of Ramadan. So they do a big fest, like a meal, and his wife needed his help. And he's on the way home, but he gets a call about a woman giving birth at a gas station in Tapiot. And what do? Your wife needs you, but a woman's giving birth in a gas station on the way to the hospital. So he turns around and he gets there within 35 seconds. He's there. He was around the corner. The husband of the wife was a Hasidic, Sephardic, Breslov Chassid. And he's the long payers and a big, huge beard, a big white yarmulke, screaming for help. He's like begging anyone to help his wife. The baby's like coming out. And all of a sudden, Muhammad comes up with that orange, big, beautiful orange ambicycle. And he shows up to the gas station, and the rabbi is like, this Hasidic guy is like screaming, bah, 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 bah. So he didn't even have time to put on gloves, to take off his helmet. He's just working, and he sees the baby's coming out with a golden cord around the neck, choking. But he was able to release that cord, and the baby just flew out, and the husband saw what's going on. He fainted. He was on the floor. He was like a tough guy, but he fainted when he saw the baby. He saw the baby die, and the baby purple. Meanwhile, another volunteer showed up, so he was treating the husband. The third volunteer was treating the wife, and then he was treating the baby. It became a multi-casualty incident. And then when the husband woke up, they told him the baby's fine. He had a baby boy, Mazel Tov. He was so happy. He says, that angel that came, he's my Mashiach. He came. Where is he? He goes over to him. He didn't even ask him what he is, who he is, nothing. He runs, he starts hugging him. He said, you saved my baby. You saved my baby. If it wasn't for you, he would have been not alive. And you saved my baby next week. And the bris, I want you to be the Sunday. So now Muhammad realized this guy doesn't know who he is, right? And he thinks Hatzalah is only Jewish people, He's from Queens. He thought it's only Jewish people, this guy. So he's like, he goes around, he said to the guy, no, thank you. I don't need any tzaddik. It's a big gift. We don't take tips. We don't take money. We're the only organization actually in Israel who doesn't charge for emergency services. So he says, we're not allowed to take anything in return. He says, no, please, you come, you have to give me the tzaddik. I want my family to meet you. You're my Mashiach. So he says to him, listen, and usually we never allowed to take tips. I see you really want to give me something. I'm late to go home to help my wife. Just send my wife a note with a little bouquet of flowers, just a few baby roses. The note telling her the story, she'll be happy. That's enough for me. He said, no. I want you to be the tzaddik. I don't care with the stubborn Moroccan guy. And they're fighting over this thing. He says, no, a little bouquet of flowers is enough for me. And they're fighting over this over and over. And he says, you know what? I see you such a tzaddik. Not only do I want you to be a tzaddik, I want to name my son after you. Now, Muhammad doesn't know how to get out of this thing, He says, no, please, just a little bouquet of flowers. And after fighting for a while, he says, you know what? I'm just going to tell him who I am. He says, I know you realize you don't want to send me a bouquet of flowers. You want to give me my name. I'm not sure if my name will do well in the yeshiva. You want to send your son. He says, what's wrong with your name? He says, well, I'm not Jewish, and my name is Muhammad.
Did it say it again?
He looks at him. He says, you're in Hatzalah? He said, yeah, we have Arabs in Hatzalah. He says, you know what? I want to send you a huge bouquet of flowers. What's your address? But that's the beautiful, when I heard this story, I realized that we actually did a kiddush Hashem. And I want to tell you about this because this connects to October 7th. We started saving lives. Since we started, we treated 7.5 million people.
Wow.
1.5 million people, not everyone we save, but an average day, we treat 2,000 people. 2,000 people an average day. Around 15% of these people are in life-threatening situations. So imagine, make the calculations. Few hundred people a day are saved by United itself. Tens of thousands of people were saved over the years, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. October 7th is a day I will never, ever forget for the rest of my life. Look, I've been to every terrorist attack you can imagine, in hotels blowing up on Seder night. In restaurants, there's Barra restaurants and Moment and Cafe Hillel and many other places and buses. I've been to car accidents. I've been to disasters like the building of a wedding wall that collapsed. The Versailles wedding hall, I was the first one there. And I saw the Kala under the rubble. And many disasters, but if I put everything together, it doesn't get even close to October 7th, one day. I put everything together. The trauma that we still suffer, and I'm sure you're all suffering. We're all suffering. Some of you, unfortunately, are suffering it twice because you saw other traumas, like the Holocaust, maybe some people here. And I'm thinking about what happened that day was one of the biggest miracles of the Jewish people. I really want to tell you another perspective to October 7th, because everyone wants to know, how did a thing like this happen? Well, how did the 9/11 happen? A lot of things came. We never expected anything like this. We never expected human beings could do anything like this. Unfortunately, some people went through this in Europe, and they saw what Germans, the most educated people in the world, could do. How could you not expect from a bunch of barbarian Muslim people to do radical Islamics who don't believe anyone else should breathe besides for them? And we didn't prepare ourselves well. But October 7th, Israel was open. They could have gone to Jerusalem. I was there. And 9,000 terrorists that came into Israel. 9,000 terrorists who walked into Israel thinking the Israeli army, the IDF, will fight them. 85% of the IDF soldiers who were in that area were away for Shabbat or holiday. A lot of them were drinking the night before in parties. Soldiers want to have fun. Most of these soldiers didn't even know till noon that anything happened. A lot of them were sleeping late. They weren't ready. The army didn't say, go home, but it might be a war. They didn't even expect anything because they didn't take anything serious. And the terrorists came into the kibbutzim, Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Nir Oz, everywhere, every kibbutz, Sderot, Ofakim, Netivot, and many other places, and Nova Festival, and started murdering Jewish people, raping, burning people, burning for no reason. Why do you have to burn, kill? They're burning, they're enjoying the burning of humiliating the Jewish nation. The first volunteer of ours that was actually killed on October 7th, we had 600 volunteers who lived there in these areas that we trained in Chalutza and other places. Volunteers who actually were trained to live, to be on call, like Hatzalah everywhere. We had Hatzalah in Yerushalayim, Hatzalah in Haifa, Hatzalah in Eilat, and all over the Yeshuvim and Kibbutzim there. First volunteer that was actually murdered was a volunteer of ours by the name of Awad Dawarsha, an Arab volunteer, who joined United Hatzalah many years ago. He wanted to be a doctor like me, but he couldn't make it, and because of different reasons, became a paramedic. And he was actually a standby paramedic of the Nova Festival. They asked us to send paramedics to help them, so we sent Arab volunteers because it's Chag. And he was there, and he was actually fighting to save lives, and he didn't run away. When a lot of people ran away, everyone ran away. He said, I'm staying there because I want to save lives. And he was actually caught by the terrorists. They knew he's an Arab. He spoke Arabic to them. He said, I'm not losing the patient. Let me save the woman I'm treating. They killed him and the woman. They shot him 25 times. Thank you. Once he's associated with United Hatzalah, the Jewish organization, he's dead. And the second one was in Nir Oz, a volunteer of ours, by the name of Dolev Yehud. He left his home early in the morning. He told his wife, stay in the bomb shelter. The areas were surrounded. That kibbutz was hit the most. A third of the kibbutz were either murdered or kidnapped. A third. And he ran out to save the Bibas family, the kids with the red-headed children. They were next door neighbors of his. And he was murdered that day. It took 8 months to find his body. 8 months. They didn't know it was him. He was burned to crisp. And his sister was kidnapped, and his brother-in-law. That was the second and third volunteer. When Alice said his name, but he was an incredible human being. He lived in Kriyat Malachi. He was part of the Shin Bet, Secret Service, in the highest operations in Israel. He was a volunteer of ours. We didn't know. We have volunteers who are lawyers, accountants, who are fishermen, taxi drivers, everyone, every Am Israel. And he was a Shin Bet top fighter. He was called to save people, and then he saw what's going on. He took out his gun. He killed lots of terrorists, and unfortunately, they killed him in the end of the fight. And we had 25 volunteers injured, and we had one volunteer who was kidnapped, Bar Cooperstein. The Nova Festival, he was there as a security guard and an EMT. And his father, unfortunately, was in a really bad condition, 100% paralyzed. When he went to save lives, an ambicycle, he was once injured. This is 5 years ago. And he is paralyzed 100% because he went to save someone and he was hit in an accident. We treat 2,000 people. We treat 700,000 plus a year. So sometimes we have accidents. And he's, unfortunately, his family suffering so much. Organization that day treated 12,500 people all over the Israel. I'm just going to say one story and then I'll have questions. And this is heroism. One story about my wife, Kitty. Some of you know, I know we have family members who were family, right? Your cousins. My wife, Kitty, some of you know her family, the Gottenberg family from the Pioneer Country Club. That was my wife's grandmother. Gittel, she's named after my wife's named after her grandmother. So Hefler was my father-in-law. And anyways, my wife decided she wants to become a paramedic. She was an EMT, which is like a simple level, like the basic level, which is the most common in Hatzalah, 90% of the volunteers. Then some people want to go to school for a few years. My wife decided she wants to go to university to become a paramedic. But 4 years for her, 4 years. She graduated October 1st, 2023. And my wife, October 1st, Sukkot, we had a beautiful Sukkot together. My wife decided when October 7th happened, when early in the morning, I ran to save lives. My daughter's EMT, my son-in-law's, everyone ran out. My wife decided she's taking her gun, bulletproof vest, helmet, and she's running down south. I told her, "Get you sure you want to do this?" She said, "No one was there for my mother. Her mother was a Holocaust survivor. Her mother was adopted by the Gottenberg family. She was 3 years old. She was saved from the Nazis. And the Gottenbergs came and they adopted her and another brother, another person whose name is Jackie. Exactly. Thank you. Uncle Jackie. And they adopted these two kids. But my wife was on the phone with me. I said, "Gitty, we had volunteers killed already. You sure you want to go?" I said, "It's very dangerous." It's amazing that every single volunteer of Hatzalah went in. They wanted to go in. We couldn't stop them. My wife said, I want to go. I said, "Gitty, they're shooting at every car." She said, "No one was there for my wife, my mother's family. My uncles and aunts and grandparents were all murdered by the Nazis. No one was there to help them. How could I not go help them? I'm a paramedic. I need to go help them." And my wife said, "I'm doing what I'm supposed to do as a Jew and as a paramedic." And she went in. I didn't hear from her for hours. And I was like so busy. I had to make decisions that day. Then more people, after we heard more volunteers were injured and but a few hostages there. And so, thank God, most of them released besides one. But we had to make these decisions. And I had to make decisions 11 AM, my wife calls me, she says, I have a place with 50 injured people. And these 50 people are in the critical conditions. We have to get them out of there. We do triage. Some of them are not gonna make it, but we need to transfer them to the hospitals in the center, like Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, because the hospitals are packed. In the south, the hospitals were packed. And she said that we can't send my ambulances. We have, Hatzalah, we have now almost 100 ambulances. Thank God, that's true, but we didn't have enough ambulances to send all these people. They were so busy, we had so many thousands of injured people. She said, we need helicopters. Yeah, we lease 3 helicopters, not ours. So I couldn't do whatever I want. I have to ask for permission. The owners of the helicopter said to me, the airspace control of Israel is shut down. We can't fly these helicopters. My wife said, we need to get this guy. I'm treating a guy who has a bullet in his head. He has a ring on his finger. I need to save him. He's married with kids. I need to save this guy. She said, I said, get the triage. Treat someone we could save. I was like, if you can't, she said, no, I'm not letting him go. Send the helicopter. I called the guy. I said, could you send the helicopter? She said, no, they don't give me permission to fly. I said, in Hatzalah, we never ask for permission. We always do what we need to do, and then we ask for forgiveness. That's how we do it. That's how we started Hatzalah. I said, how could you ask for permission? He says, I can't. It's helicopter. They're gonna blow me up. I said, fly low. Says, I don't know fly a helicopter, but I said, do something about it. People are dying. He says, I don't have insurance. I said, how much is a helicopter? He said, $5 million. I said, don't worry about it. We'll get the donation if we need to cover your cost. Just do whatever you need to do. Forget about insurance now. I said, okay, convince my pilots to fly. I'm okay with it. He gave me the number of the head pilot. I called him up. He starts crying. He said, you know how many hours I'm waiting in the cockpit for you to give us permission to fly? The pilot says, I'm ready to go in to fight and save people. I don't care if I'm putting my life in danger. Isn't this great, Am Yisrael? So I started crying. I said, okay, go. He had a doctor, he had paramedics, and they flew in. And the first patient they picked up was Nir, the person my wife was treating. Nir, 26-year-old guy who had no chance of survival. Was on the helicopter with another patient. They flew him to Tel Aviv. Went back and forth the whole day. The helicopters, the only ones who were flying. And then we treated thousands of people that day. My wife, weeks could not talk about what she saw. She was so traumatized. Came back 2 days later, and I asked my wife, whatever happened there? Tell me. She was had a hard time. She says, she told me about this soldier, and she said that you sent a helicopter for, and because of that, he's alive, but he's a vegetable in the hospital. You know, he has a bullet in his head. So she said, maybe I made a mistake by saving him or treating him. His wife and 2 kids, they're gonna have a father who's like nothing, you know. I said, Kitty, you know, you told me that story about your mother that no one was there for them. And you were there for this young man, Nir, and many others. I told my wife, you did your hishtadlut, you did your maximum hishtadlut, how to say, effort. And now Hashem has to do his job. You did your job. Let Hashem do his job. 6 months after he woke up in the hospital. After. Yeah, some difficulty. Yeah.